All right, welcome everyone to this beautiful afternoon here in Turkey and your time of the day, wherever you are. I have the beautiful sun setting right in front of me. Before we dive in, I want to leave the mic to Mert to give us some tips and tricks on Zoom so that we use it effectively throughout the call. And then I will take it over again.
Thanks, Kerem. Welcome, everyone. So this might be maybe a repetition for some of you about all the Zoom tricks going on, but it's also critical for all of us to have a smoother and more intimate experience on Zoom. So first of all, we will keeping you all on mute throughout this session to keep, as I say, smoother interaction. And in order to have us more intimate and immersive experience, I suggest you go and click the gallery view, which is the upper right corner of your screen. You can see 9 dots on the upper right corner of your screen, which is the gallery view. So you can see all of our beautiful faces with gallery view rather than the speaker view, but you can also switch back and forth as you wish. And also, many of us already have their cameras on, so feel free to put your camera on, say hello, wave, and see each other's nice faces. Also, there's a panel below all the cameras, all the faces. You can see the chat button there. So if you have any questions, if you need any support throughout the session, feel free to write from the chat, and there will be many people from ATÖLYE and ATÖLYE Academy team will be supporting you with your any needs might be emerging, and feel free to comment and post questions during the session on chat as well. And just a few more things. You can click on participants button on the panel below. And on the right-hand side, you can see all the participants joining in this call. And if you just find your name there and on the participant list and click more, and you can rename yourself, you can just put a, I don't know, any name you want, or put your organization or country you are joining from, or your nickname, however you wish, but you can rename yourself there. And after Farah's session, Farah's share, we will be having breakout rooms. You don't need to do anything to join the breakouts. We will be automatically sending you into the breakout rooms. And after the breakouts, for the Q&A part, we will be using raise hands button, which is, you can see the participant list. Under the participant list, you can see the raised hand button. Maybe few of you, the ones who've already found it, can click on it, and you can see the if you want to speak up, if you want to ask a question, you can click on the raised hand button that's below the participant list. And if you have any questions, if you need any support going forward, feel free to write us on chat and we will be helping you. Thank you. Over to you, Kerem.
Nice. Thanks, Mert. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up if you can. Perfect. All right, so this is an extremely exciting day for me personally to listen to Farah's talk, but I think for the whole ATÖLYE community and our wider network. It's the second edition of our Life Lessons series as part of the ATÖLYE Academy. Before we dive in, I want to, for those of you who are not as familiar with ATÖLYE and our academy efforts, I want to run you through our philosophy very briefly, just so you're up to date on kind of where we're coming from and where we're headed towards. So let me do a screen share. So for those of you who are not as familiar with ATÖLYE, We are an organization that's now about 6-7 years old. And from the get-go, how we did things and why we did things mattered a lot to us than our certain offerings or the way we solved problems, because we thought that in such an emerging world, the form might change. However, why we stand and how we stand will always matter. So as such, we are a creative services organization. We solve our clients' toughest challenges through different disciplines of design and creativity. And that is the strategic design studio that sits together with an academy within a vibrant creative hub. The vibrant creative hub is the community that we've gathered around ATÖLYE. Most of you are from our community, and hopefully more to join. Because we believe that today's challenges are such that we can't, in any single organization can't solve them individually, and we may just simply not have the right minds, the right hearts, the right skill sets in the organization to solve. So as a result, we depend heavily on our community to tackle the kinds of challenges our partners and clients are feeding to us. And the Academy is our most recent initiative. We've always really believed in transforming individuals as much as transforming organizations, and as part of our efforts to create change makers within organizations as well as individuals within their own fields, we've created the Academy. And we believe that in today's world, again, the challenges that we face might change. Today it might be Corona, and tomorrow it might be something new. But areas of creative leadership, of radical collaboration, and of systems design, so thinking of these issues as systemic issues, not just one-off things, will be critical as we go along our path. So the Academy's focus is to equip individuals, organizations, and teams with these skills and mindsets. And the red thread across all is facilitation. Once again, in most cases, we don't have the right answers as ATÖLYE, even within our community. So only through the effective use of facilitation, we believe we can tackle some of these, some of these massive challenges that our partners and clients are facing. And we offer these facilitation experiences through learning programs, events, and workshops. One example of an event is this one. And it was very interesting to see how that whole framework of bringing together individuals has been transformed by the crisis that we're going through, and we are hoping to adapt even further as time goes along. Workshops is more 2-3 day, sometimes to a week long experiences that our partner organizations and individuals, our clients, can go through to learn about new skills, to become cutting-edge practitioners in certain fields. And then programs are more longer-lasting experiences, again under the areas of creative leadership, creative collaboration, and creative problem solving. And that brings us to Life Lessons, the second edition. We will be hosting Farah Ramzan Golant, whom I will talk a little bit about after our check-in. So before we dive into that, I want to share the agenda with you. We will have a brief check-in with all of you so that we get to hear a bit more about you, who we have in the audience. And then Farah will share her story for about 40 minutes. Then we will break into breakout rooms as Mert explained, and more instructions will come after the share. Then we will have a Q&A and a checkout. So with that, I want to now go into our check-in. And the way the check-in will work is I will share with you a sentence that will start with something, and you will basically end it with by writing your comments in the chat box. One simple request I have is that you don't press enter, you don't press return until we say go, so that we hear all your comments all at the same time. It's a beautiful flow in the chat box, and then together we can read through what's basically emerging in the audience. So the first one is I am a, comma, joining from. So however you define yourself, as well as wherever you're joining from, we would love to hear and read from you. And with that, go. This is beautiful. So we have a lot of curious people, curious person from Bursa, curious mind from Berlin, a few Berliners, a chef in New York City, accountant from Chicago, a principal from a very inspiring school here in Istanbul, design strategist, runner from Poland, a lot of people from Istanbul and Ankara and other parts of Turkey, an experimenter and time traveler who doesn't want to disclose where they are, as it might depend, I guess. People from the Q family. It's beautiful to see people joining from New York City, Montreal, San Francisco. Very interesting. Learning designers, a marketing person joining from a leading technology company here in Istanbul, in Turkey, producer from Toronto, London, the UAE, Dubai, Ottawa. Beautiful. I mean, if we did this in person, there's no way we would have this diversity in-house. So I guess that's the positive side of COVID, that it allows voices from different parts of the world to come together through experiences like this. So thanks for coming and bringing your point of view. The second line we have is today I showed up because. So with that, today I showed up because, go. So once again, a lot of people joining because they're curious about what Farah has to share, simply because she is speaking. A collective change making, because I'm curious and need to get inspired. She's super inspiring and I need to hear her story. To see Kerem and Farah go hand in hand, that's nice. I showed up because of Farah. A lot of people coming here, of course, to listen to her. It's part of cross-border learning. Dropping in to say hi. Showed up because I wanted to socialize, be inspired, listen to a beautiful story. Love listening life experiences and personal stories where you're in the right place. Transformation going on. Very beautiful. Kerem, my boss is basically saying Kerem would have killed me if I didn't. So that's good to read. Thanks, Michael, for that. I want to see people's faces, not only my. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Somebody joined from Bogota. That's nice. Energized by our events, and virtual should be no different. Thank you, Ömer. And then the final one, and an important one to tie us to the theme of today, which is uncertainty, is one thing that helps me navigate uncertainty is, and then your share, please. So one thing that helps me navigate uncertainty. Go, please. So going through some of the answers, hope and myself, curiosity, spending some time alone, is to accept it, nice, my nephew, beautiful, movement, breath, breathing, meditation, living in the present, imagination, my team, hope, unity, to embrace it, walks in nature, passion and community, my gut feel, nice. Knowing nothing is certain anyway, yeah, true. Creativity, curiosity, pausing, optimism, accepting, make my daily routine certain, communication, God, writing, deep thinking while cooking, trust my instincts, balancing inner and outer voices, you only live once mindset, is mindfulness, reading, a cold pint of beer also, nice. All right, beautiful, thank you. Thank you for sharing who you are, what's in your head and what's in your heart. Thank you. So now we will start the talk. And before we dive in, I want to say a few words about Farah. And this is probably the most difficult task I've had since COVID started. It's to talk about Farah, to think about, to feel about, and talk about Farah is on one hand very easy because things just flow into you, but it's also very difficult because I only have 2 hours to share with you. I'm kidding, I don't. If I did, I would easily fill it in a heartbeat. We met Farah about 1.5 years ago, and she came to Istanbul and to really listen to our story in the most pure and curious way possible. And that's something already very precious. In today's world, I don't think we have the opportunity to tell our story in such a generous way always, and it's purely because we don't have the listeners in front of us. But she was there and she listened, and she provoked and she challenged in many ways. And I always knew that there was one single reason behind all this, and that was because she cared about me as a person, about Engin, my co-founder, as a person, and she really cared about our philosophy, and she believed that only by challenging us, only by provoking us, only by shining the light in certain places where we might see darkness was the way we would move forward. She's someone I trust more than in my business life. Wouldn't be too little to say, to be honest with you. When I ask her a question, I know that the answer she would give me comes from both from her heart and from her mind. And again, that's a huge luxury, and I feel grateful for it. Atölye has embarked on many things that we wouldn't have the courage or the vision or sometimes even the mindset to embark on. Our experiments in the UAE, our initiatives in London, and our dreams about the rest of the world of bringing this philosophy to communities, to creative communities. These wouldn't be possible, to be honest with all of you, without Farah's guidance, without her courage, and without her right provocation. One way she provoked me recently was we are starting a new class as part of the academy with another person who will be giving the class with me. And the class name is Leadership Under Uncertainty. And I said, Farah, wouldn't it be beautiful for your share to be also focused on uncertainty? Because we want to actually start a class called Leadership Under Uncertainty through ATÖLYE Academy. And she said, leadership under uncertainty, is there any other kind of leadership? And I was like, that's true. So maybe we should find a new name for this class, which we are now in the process of looking for a new name. But I know that this will be her story of navigating uncertainty as a leader. I'm very excited about it. I also want to briefly read you her more, I guess, descriptive bio. Currently the EMEA, the Europe, Middle East, and African CEO for the Q Collective, which is a creative collective of some of the world's industry-defining organizations like IDEO, like SYPartners, like Sid Lee, like BEWorks, all really using creativity as a source to propel the economy and society forward. Before joining Q, Farah served as the CEO of Girl Effect, a creative nonprofit, and the chief executive of All 3 Media, UK's biggest independent television content production group. She had a successful 22-year-old career at BBDO and served on the British Prime Minister's Business Advisory Group. In 2011, she was awarded a Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, CBE, and was named Businesswoman of the Year in 2010 Asian Woman of Achievement Awards. So with that, I leave the microphone to Farah, and I'm personally, again, very excited, very curious about what she has to share. Please listen with a mindset of navigating uncertainty, and we will then go through into our breakout rooms to discuss what was shared and reflect back, and then have a Q&A. So thank you again for being with us, Farah. Mic to you.
Sorry, I've just had a text from Farah and her computer decided to freeze at that exact moment, so she's just logging back into Zoom.
Okay, I'm back. I think it's because it was such a long and such a complimentary and beautiful lead up. I think it was technology's way of saying, Kerem, enough already. Stop talking about me. It's you know, humbling and slightly amusing, because I think to myself, who is that person that he's talking about? Anyway, I'm here. I'm really excited to talk today about life lessons. Thank you for inviting me. But before I start, I would like to make 2 confessions straight up. So my first confession is that I am an extrovert, and as an extrovert, I feed off the energy of people, the room, body language. Normally I would be in a room with, I think there are 110 people, and I would be, through my peripheral vision, I would think, how many women are there versus men? How are people sitting? What do their expressions look like? So as an extrovert in this format, which is completely new for me, I am slightly starved of the things I need to tell a story. So bear with me. I do my best to watch your faces and read the mood of the room. But the first thing is that I miss that we are not together, and I miss it profoundly. The second thing is that though I have some skills, I am deeply, chronically behind in terms of technology. So my ability to screen share, which I've only just learned to do, I have some photographs and some quotes, and I really hope that I can show them to you. So my 2 confessions are, this is an extrovert working in a very unusual way, and using technology, which normally is just not my thing. So let's have a go. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal and professional life journey. That was my brief from Kerem and Mert. But before I start about my journey and the things that I have learned, both in peacetime and in wartime, both in times of certainty and prosperity and in times of recession, austerity and shock, there are some communal threads that have woven across that. I want to start with an actual journey, somebody real who actually did an epic journey. So here we go, screen share, first time, let's see if that works. Can you see this? Yeah, so in 1913, allegedly, Sir Ernest Shackleton, who was an amazing Antarctic explorer, posted this ad in the Times, allegedly, because it's been put into doubt. And if you read what was said in 1913 by somebody who was, you might argue this is one of the best, most powerful recruitment ads of all time, to place an ad that says men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Now that sure is a way to recruit people into a journey. And the reason that I mean, he was an amazing guy. For those of you who know, he was a figure who was meant to be part of they say, a heroic age of Antarctic exploration. And the reason that ad spoke to me and has always spoken to me is at one level, it's really clear from those very few words, the kind of person he wanted to recruit. Made it really clear in a few words of bleakness, with very little hope, very little optimism, the kind of person he wanted on the crew. So it was a way of saying, as a leader, most of you should not apply. There's a very special, certain kind of person who will follow me on this expedition. And it made clear in very few words a sense of his vision, his quest, his style. I imagine he was a bit of a hard ass and it wasn't a joke a minute on his expedition. I imagine there were some very strong rules. But I think if you think about that ad, 1913, if that ad was rewritten today, and I'm only going to make one reference to COVID, and the reference is now, if you were writing that ad today and thought about how it would be written to recruit people to the front line of health, the health workers who are being called out of medical schools early, who have not completed their exams but are coming to the front line, people who have retired and are coming out of retirement back into the front line, and you think about how that ad would be written, which is that exposure to infection and sickness, safety in doubt, long hours, 60, 70 hours, you see that some things are timeless. And if that ad was written today for COVID, it would bear a remarkable resemblance to the way Sir Ernest Shackleton wanted a certain kind of person. But that said, I will say one more thing about the ad is it actually speaks to me as an analogy for leadership in modern times, because it speaks to a leader and a sense of how do leaders recruit people on uncertain journeys, whether the journey is in the time of prosperity and economic plenty, or whether the journey is in time of austerity, shock, and contraction. Leaders need to recruit people to come with them in a certain way. And for that, in that aspect, I think of this talk about leadership and uncertainty, and a sense of leadership needing to look into the face of uncertainty, not just look into it, but walk towards it, and to bring people with you. And that for me is a very simple definition of leadership. There are many definitions of leadership, but the notion of having the courage, resilience, and expertise to stare into the face of uncertainty, to embrace it, to walk towards it, and to bring people with you. So that's kind of the recruitment, I think, that we need to bear in mind of who we are and how we bring people with us. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about me personally, because in a way, though uncertainty is heightened now, and we're undoubtedly in a time where uncertainty is with a capital letter, I feel that actually in my own life story, there have been moments of great uncertainty and ambiguity, and they have given me a kind of sense of it's okay to live with ambiguity, and it's actually a strength to be able to navigate uncertainty. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, show you some photographs because they might make you smile, and then tell you about the 4 chapters of leadership that I have experienced over 30 years. So here we go. So I was born in Africa, in Nairobi, to a family that was half Indian, half Iranian. You know, my mother was born into an extremely well thought of, highly respected, very affluent family in Tanzania. My father was from a very poor, very modest, nowheresville, no education family in Zanzibar. And the beginning of the ambiguity that surrounded me was that she from an extremely amazing family, he from an extremely poorly thought of family, they ran away together, they eloped, and they came to Nairobi, and I was their first child. And from the very beginning, my parents gave me a really strong sense of, we are surrounded by uncertainty, we have no community, we live in Kenya, though our families live elsewhere, our families don't speak to us, we have been a little bit excommunicated from the communities that we lived in, and actually we must make it our strength. So there I was, precocious young child in my white dress in Africa. We managed to immigrate, come to London in 1969. I had the benefit of an amazing British education, made it through hard work to Cambridge. And actually my Cambridge story is, this is the day I graduated, and we were standing on the front court of Emmanuel College, and I'm that person in the middle, but you can see that I'm frowning and I look a little bit lost. I don't look like I'm happy or celebrating. And the reason is that there was a story about my time at Cambridge that nobody knew, which is I had applied to Cambridge and I had done the exams, and I received a letter on the day I was due to receive it, telling me that I had been rejected from Cambridge and that the college would decline to offer me a place. So of course, you do what all teenagers do. I was devastated. I listened to Elvis Presley songs. I cried for 3 days, and then I got over myself. 3 days later, I got an identical letter, literally dated the same date, written in the same way, signed by the same master of Emmanuel College, offering me a place at Cambridge. And both letters were identical. One was a rejection, one was an acceptance. Both of them were on identical dates, postmarked. I don't know why they came one after another. And I had that sliding doors moment when I thought, well, am I rejected or am I accepted? Who am I? Am I wanted or am I not wanted? And I remember calling my headmistress and her saying, you will take the choice now to accept the letter that you're wishing to accept. You will call the college and say in a very calm voice, I'm responding to my letter dated the 11th of July, and I would like to accept my place at Cambridge. And as I made that call, of course, I waited for someone to say, no, there's been a mistake. We don't actually want you here. You haven't actually got a place. We've actually rejected you. Please go away. And of course, they didn't. They said, we're happy to see you and you'll come in September. And I tell you that story partly because it was devastating at the time, but a moment of comic sliding doors. And I think of how much of my life started there and how much of it rested on just chance, just the ambiguity. Someone made a mistake, someone sent 2 letters, and from those 2 letters, I took my place and went on in life. So the notion of take the uncertainty, walk towards it, and sometimes just make it yours, even though it's completely implausible. I then skip, and I'm not going to bore you, with a blow by blow, but I skipped to my first job in advertising at a beautiful agency called Abbott Mead Vickers, and these 3 chapters of my life, I've been CEO in 3 different companies and 4th now in Q. They're very uneven chapters, and I learned very different things from each chapter. And they're chapters that took very uneven passages of time. So the next chapter was 22 years of my life. Literally, it was a flow from 25 to 48, where I worked at a company and I learned craft and creativity at the front line. I learned the notion of community and how you build things, how you grow things. I learned the notion of optimism. I learned what it was like to be in a high performing company. I learned what it was like to win awards. So that was a passage of time, and it was not without its challenges, but it was a passage of time, which I would say were times of incredible growth and optimism. And then the day came, finally, where I was invited to step up to be the CEO of the company. A moment that I had waited for so long. And of course, there I am now as a CEO of Britain's most beautiful agency, a community that I've loved and nourished. And in that first month of my CEO-ness, when everything beautiful that I could possibly want in my whole life was there for me, we went into a shock, and our 3 biggest clients, British Telecom, Home-Based, which is a big DIY retailer, and Sainsbury's, Britain's leading supermarket. Our 3 biggest clients put us up for pitch. And I remember that moment of thinking, do I have a sign on my head that says, new CEO, please beat the shit out of me as quickly as possible? That this prestigious agency that has finally been given to me to nourish and grow, now I'm going to reside over its contraction and its death. And I remember in that challenge, and a lot has been written about it, that the only way to navigate the uncertainty at that point, the certainty of an amazing agency, the certainty of somebody did the maths and said to me as the CEO, if we lose these 3 pitches, we will go from being the #1 agency in Britain to number 9 overnight. We will have to lay off 25% of our workforce. Obviously, our reputation will fall and possibly more clients will follow. So that really unhelpful voice in my ear that day, whoever it was, what I learned in that moment was we could not be stuck in an old story. We could not be that great agency with those great assets. We had to move on and create a new story. And I'm going to come back to the notion of the restless need to develop your story. And it was in thinking about reinventing the agency and actually pulling the team together to say, we are not Abbott Mead. We love it, we live it, but we now need to be a new group with a new set of provocations and a new set of confidences. And in fact, we will compete with ourselves. Everything we would have done in this pitch, we are going to compete with ourselves. We see no other champion out there. We will fight ourselves. And of course, the events went really brilliantly. We won all 3 pitches. We didn't go to number 9. We stayed at number 1. We went from strength to strength. But it was in that moment where you wanted to express fear, rage, anger, dismay, the unfairness of it all, where you had to pull yourself together and say, I can't be stuck in this story. I have to move on. Anyway, and in that, I want to put up a thought from Ernest Hemingway, because I go on now very quickly to get to the latter parts of the story, which is, he was actually asked, as Nicola pointed out, because she's always verifying my quotes so I don't improvise, he was actually asked, how did you get bankrupt? And Hemingway answered 2 ways, gradually and then suddenly. But I think that is a metaphor or a quote for how change has happened in my life. It's happened in 2 ways, very gradually and then very suddenly, because we went on, great things happen. As Kerem mentioned, I got my CBE. My beautiful family were with me that day. That family now has become grown-up children. You think of the humor and the comedy and the lightness of children who, in fact, provoke you and criticize you. The Ishtar there on the left is now studying to be an immigration lawyer, very interested in workplace employment law and unfair dismissals, gender-based discrimination in the workplace, whereas Zach is studying maths at university. So I guess that's what a high period looks like: slow, steady, built the family, built the business, grew the agency, grew the culture. And then that period came to an end. And what happened next, 22 years of a sort of beautiful blur, what happened next was, I would call, 2 years of learning an altogether different leadership skill. And that was the skill of scale. I went from Abbott Mead, I went to now All3 Media. It was $1 billion in turnover, $1 billion when I started. 19 studios spread across the world, backed by private equity, an altogether different landscape. And in that landscape, I almost had to unlearn the lessons of 22 years. And in 2 years, I had to learn some new lessons. This poster that I saw on Bumble the day that we signed the deal in London, but this someone sent to me. This is that, which made me really laugh. Be the CEO your parents always wanted you to marry, then find someone you actually like. And it speaks to being a woman leader. The day that we signed for the sale of All3 Media, just under $1 billion, the headline in the papers was, well, that's unthinkable. It's an extraordinary achievement. It was a company that could not be sold. And can you imagine? It was a woman CEO achieved that sale. We must study it. We must make case studies. How could it be that, some woman from nowhere has managed this company? And I remember this poster, which someone sent me from New York, which is, when you're in a world where it is a little bit the boys' club and deals are being made in a way that aren't exactly playing to your values, is to always remember, A, a sense of humor, and B, the time will come when you no longer need to compromise. So that always made me smile, because a friend and an ally said, you are that CEO. You didn't have to marry him, you became her, and you actually married someone that you loved. So that was a really nice end to that. And then finally, just conscious of the time, the last chapter, which I would say, those 3 years I went client side. Nike recruited me to run a part of Nike Foundation, which was the Girl Effect. And it was really going back to this notion of how do you use content, creative ideas, mobile technology, data, how do you use the flow of ideas to disrupt ingrained poverty amongst women in the global south, girls and women? How do you use WhatsApp, audio, television? How do you create communities on Facebook to give people voice, to enable girls to stand up and have a voice and have agency? And I have to say, those 3 years, I thought it was slightly implausible to go client side. I'm an agency side person. I'm not a client side person. But those 3 years were amongst the happiest 3 years of my life, because I had gone to the profit motive and now I came back to purpose. I came back to disruption. I was a trained CEO in a commercial sense, trained to run a commercial enterprise, and now I'm running a not-for-profit, which was amazing. I was able to bring a lot of commercial private sector understanding into the public sector. And most importantly of all, I was able to get out into the world and meet people. I met people everywhere. And this is just a picture of one girl. Her name was Aisha. That's not her real name. I met her in Addis. I met girls like her in Nigeria, in Rwanda. I met people in the slums of Mumbai. I actually covered a lot of ground. And in that time, I went away from being in an office in an ivory tower, surrounded by the institution of CEO-ness, surrounded by the sort of infrastructure that comes with being a CEO. And I got out on the road. And those were my happiest years, because everywhere I went, I was able to be context specific, to go under the skin of a culture, to learn about other people's hardships, to understand the disruptive power of technology. This girl, Aisha, who had nothing, no resources. She'd been raped when she was 13. She had a baby when she was 14. The baby is now a year old. She's 15. And she was telling me about her WhatsApp group. She was telling me about how they organize self-help, how her friends from school bring her books, how her daughter will have a different life from the life she had. And she is in the most poor and rural part of Ethiopia. But she was the bringer of hope to her community. And she was the one that said, my trauma, the rape, will not define me. What will define me is the agency and the voice and the value that society will give my girl. And I found that incredible. It was an incredible journey. And I went around the world and I stood up on stages telling the story. This is me on the left. In fact, Michael invited me to go to C2 in Montreal, and that's a huge light box. I was standing on this monster big light box, talking about creativity and technology to disrupt systems of poverty. And then on the right at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, trying to persuade the big mobile network operators, the huge network operators with their infinite resource, their infinite data, their infinite R&D, to turn their intelligence and their thinking into poverty alleviation. And those were incredible days. And my learning from there was, of course, it wasn't the voyage, it wasn't the many thousands and thousands of miles. The discovery there, the journey, was not the landscape, but that it gave me new eyes. And this is one of my famous favorite quotes, because what it did was it gave me a sense of new eyes on a world, not only going to new places, but actually seeing new things. So that really is that as a story. I now want to just rattle off very quickly a couple of things about Q, which is my fourth chapter. So if you think I had 22 years, then 2, then 3 at Girl Effect. Now I've been at Q, and I don't want to put a number of years onto Q. I just want to give you a sense, for those of you who don't know Q, that for me, Q is a return to perfect harmony, to the perfect sense of what purpose-driven growth looks like, what it might mean to grow things rather than to kill things, what it might be to eat what you grow from your garden rather than go out hunting in someone else's garden. Q's purpose is officially to be the source of creativity to propel the economy and society forward. As Kerem has said, it's a creative collective of amazing companies, first in class, not many, but certainly set the high bar in their discipline. And it's a collective that in many ways, and I said I wouldn't reference COVID, but I will say it just one more time, in a world where COVID has brought us to a standstill, Q's story, its preparation, the way it thinks about creativity, collectivism, collaboration, the notion of many minds tackling big challenges. In many ways, Q's time is now, and Q's time is coming in a post-COVID world. This is my favorite quote from Crystal Pite, who is a choreographer who lives in Montreal, does amazing ballet. She does modern dance. And somebody said to her, you know, we talk about creativity all the time. We at Q say, well, what's our definition of creativity? And we're always hunting for that holy grail. And actually, she summed it up beautifully. And somebody said to her in an interview recently, when she was here in London, your creativity is really hard to describe. You're part dance, you're part physical theatre, you're part multimedia, you're a hybrid. How do you describe your creativity? How do we explain what you do? I mean, it's something we talk about a lot at Q. How do we explain what we do? And in the end, she decided not to explain her function or her form. She just said, in the end, I create, and to create is to be curious, engaged, awake, and in earnest dialogue with the unknown. I realize actually that I've got a bit of an Ernest thing going on. Ernest Shackleton, Ernest Hemingway, Ernest dialogue. I realize there's like an Ernest thing happening, which just occurred to me. In any case, so here I am actually, doing this amazing job. I want to just leave you with, so that there are in my mind some golden threads that have spun their way through these different chapters of my life. And these golden threads, of course, the chapters have been different. And of course, when you're leading in a very known state versus a very uncertain state, you need different behaviors. And I'm not arguing with that. But I think there are some golden threads that unite us. And leading in uncertainty, whether it's great uncertainty or actually it's the uncertainty of success, the uncertainty of failure. There are 9 things that I feel those stories show. And because Michael loves his 9 circles, I've thought of 9 little threads. And these are my 9 little threads, and then I'll shut up and take questions. So my 9 little threads are these. 1 is to be conscious of the difference, which I learned. I mean, I had no idea. I barely knew what I was doing for half the time. But learning the difference between leading and managing. And somebody once told me, a classic student told me, that if you follow the etymology, the Greek meaning of the word leader versus the etymology of the word manager, the word leader in Greek actually means the one who chooses the path, whereas the word manager means the one who brings the horses down the path. And it's been really helpful to me to think there are times when you are choosing the path, and that is your responsibility. You must use all your experience to choose the path. And there are times actually when the path has been chosen by someone else or by circumstance, where you are actually managing by leading the horses down the path. And I think leadership needs both the choosing of the path and the bringing the horses down the path. So that's my first one, leading versus managing, and knowing where you are in the cycle, because you're not always in the same place. The second thing, which I think maybe I've already said in my switch from commercial to not-for-profit work, was understanding the purpose-profit spectrum, because in the end, enterprises need to turn, you need to create a profit in order to invest in instruments, but is to understand the spectrum and to understand that we're constantly moving on that spectrum. Sometimes year to year, P&G have a really famous case study when they thought they went through periods of focus on profit, focus on purpose. And a lot of the Q companies do brilliantly because they've understood the absolute fragile but invaluable balance between purpose and profit. One is not cherished and the other dirty, both of them cherished and necessary. My third thing, which we talk about a lot at Q, is this notion of resilience and adaptability. Now, there is no doubt, and there is way more literature than I've read on the whole notion of resilience, adaptability, agility. And I am not a specialist in these areas, but in my mind, more than resilience and adaptability, in my 4 chapters, it's certainly the 3 that are completed, I always understood the need for a sense of restless development. Those are the words that I use. The notion of restless development, so that in resilience, in building strength, in becoming fit for the future, you're constantly restlessly thinking ahead. You're constantly looking ahead, even if you're acting in the now. And as we take a long arc and we look at 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, as we think ahead, that the restless development is now. The restless development is not for tomorrow or yesterday. My 4th thing, and I'll go super quick just in case you guys are kind of wanting to go on. My 4th thing is something I have held dearly and passionately all my life, but it's only now that I've understood it, is the need for plural perspectives over a monologue. You know, the leader often thinks, a leader, presidents, heads of government, heads of institutions, the leader often thinks that they have to have a perspective, informed, of course, by many, but in the end, their point of view is the point of view that counts. And for me, it's always been plurality of perspective has made for stronger leaders, leaders who go out of their way to hear the perspectives of others around them, their top team, the youngest people in their organization, who hear plural views and then have the skill of holding multiple competing plural perspectives in one form, so that you hold all these different perspectives, but you hold them in a whole. You don't try to compress them to a monologue, nor do you leave them in chaos, but you hold a frame so that you're constantly being able to see a plural view. I think it makes you stronger. My fourth thing is resisting the urge to solve every problem right there, right then. The speed of response is undoubtedly super important. And, you know, if you're having a heart attack, the speed at which a health carer can get to you will determine whether you live or die. But I've seen in my time where we've been beset with shocks or challenges, to resist the urge to solve every single problem in the moment in which it came at you. And we do turn a little bit into problem-solving junkies. I think leaders who are very good at problem-solving don't take time to pause. I heard this case study someone told me of a study that was done of astronauts in outer space, where their ability to respond at speed would determine whether or not they would live or die. But it was the astronauts who came upon a problem, whatever the magnitude of the problem, and were able to signal, Houston, we have a problem, but the ones that could pause it and fix it in a few hours or overnight had a higher recovery rate than astronauts that went into the breach straight away to fix a problem. So this notion of solving a problem in the moment as quickly as possible, there are times when pausing and creating some stillness has came a long way for me. My sixth thing is you cannot be a leader, you cannot even pretend to be a leader if you don't know what the front line is thinking and doing. And by the front line, I mean the people who are in the organization, at the enterprise, who are at the hard end of where the work is being done, the ones who are with the clients and not with any clients, the most difficult clients, the ones who are scratching their heads in invention, the ones who are working 60-hour days on data and new innovation. If you don't know what those people are doing, you cannot lead them. And if you don't know what the youngest, freshest, brightest millennial workers in your enterprise are thinking and feeling, if you're not checking in with everyone in your organization who's under 30, I think it's hard to be a leader, because then you start to make jokes about, what do I know? I'm 55, but I make a conscious and deep effort to be with people who are much younger. Obviously, in many cases, they think I'm weird and creepy and don't know why I'm hanging out with them. But my point is, unless you know what the front line is doing, you don't really know how to lead them. Seventh thing I will say, and I've made a reference to it in my Bumble thing, is I feel as a woman, and this may not be politically correct, but I'm going to say it anyway, I have been conscious of myself as a woman and a leader, not just a woman, an ethnic woman. Now it's given me strength. I've had vulnerabilities. There have been people who've, doubted me because of my gender, not because of my skills base. I think we now live in a world, and certainly when I look at all of your faces, I think you're a generation that takes it for granted. Gender equality, diversity. I mean, these are things my children say. It literally, mummy, it's not a thing. It's not a thing anymore. It's so normal for women and men to be treated equally in the workplace. But I still come from a generation where I do feel you need to consciously think about women at the core of decision-making and leadership. It isn't enough to have 55% of women right through the organization, from interns to managers. Women have to be in leadership positions, because if women are not at the core, something will always be missing. So there it is. I know I'm not probably meant to say that, but unless you intentionally put women into the core is not whole. My eighth thing is gifted, talented, creative people, and we know a lot of them at Q, in a way, do not want to be led. So when you think about leadership and the uncertainty and how do you manage gifted people, and there's a really nice Pixar Harvard Business School review about Pixar animation, talking about creative people simply don't want to be led if leadership is directive, giving you parameters, approvals, non-approvals. Creative people actually just want you to enable their ideas to fly. And that's something I've learned in every creative business I've worked in, is that we have to think about leadership, choosing the path, bringing the horses down the path. In the creative context, creative people want you for one thing and one thing only. I mean, obviously your love and your friendship and your experience. They want you to enable their idea to fly and to do it with humanity. And when the idea cannot be enabled, they want you to tell them the truth. So creative, gifted people enable them to fly rather than have mistaken ideas about how to lead them, because they actually largely, in my view, have an allergic reaction to the notion of leadership. And then finally, number 9 is just be careful not to get stuck in the old story. And that was my Sainsbury thing, that was my All 3 Media thing, is the thing about stories is we are by and large great storytellers, all leaders, every leader I've ever worked with, bar a couple, but everyone out there in the world, their people tell amazing, touching, moving, inspiring, brilliant stories. And the thing about a story is once you tell a beautiful story, it's really hard to come off it. It's really hard to say, actually, now I'm going to change my story, because you fall in love and you're woven into a story and you're that character and you're playing that play. So don't be stuck in an old story, because restless development, the story needs to move on. The story needs to change. There are chapters you'll never get to if you get stuck in your old story. And to remember, no matter how brilliant and how successful the old story was, you have to evolve your story or it will evolve you. So that's it. Those are my 9 tips. I hope that's been useful. I've no idea actually how much of that resonates. By now I would be feeling whether people are shuffling and whether people are leaning forward or leaning back or looking at their watches. I can't see any of that. But I can say that those are my true experiences. I've lived them. And therefore, I offer them to you humbly. And then as a final slide, I'll show you, Kerem mentioned that ATÖLYE joined the collective a year ago, and of all the pictures we took a year ago, obviously official pictures of the signing and the media pictures and the community and in Beaumontida and in Kilimanjaro, this picture is one that I really love, because it was a time where not only 2 founders brought their company, their people, their process, their ideals, their philosophy, their vision, their dreams. They also brought their parents, which I thought was pretty damn good, brought their parents to it and brought their whole lived story with them. And so I just end by saying, leaders, whoever they are out there, I think we have to look at ourselves and say, as Mandela did, we are the people we've been waiting for. And as we think about navigating through uncertainty, as we think about looking at it in the face and trying to conquer our fear, is just to remember we are the people we've been waiting for. Thank you.
The most depressing part of this whole COVID thing for me is to not be able to listen to the applauses, to the clapses. So I would actually love for everyone, if you feel like it, to turn off your mute. And I just really want Farah to hear. Farah, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I know people here feel the same way. I just realized once again how blessed we are as ATÖLYE, as the creative community of Q, and many more communities to join Q in the future, to have you with us. And as you said, uncertainty will be a constant, and it's just going to be a matter of us developing the right mindsets, the right practices, the right ways of looking at the world to navigate them. And so thank you for sharing your perspective. Mert, do we have time for me to ask a question, or are we short on time?
I think we can move forward.
Okay.
And maybe you can bring a question.
Okay, I'll write my question, and if it's picked, I can. Cool. All right, I'll leave it to Mert to take over for the breakout rooms. But once again, thank you, Farah, for this beautiful, heartwarming share. It means a lot to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Farah. Before I'll move to the next activity breakout rooms, I'll just want to take a moment of stillness. Just let this beautiful story sink into our bones. Just feel it, what's alive in each of us. So I'll just take a minute for everyone. And maybe before we transition with just one word to the chat, just write whatever is alive in you right now, what is emerging in this moment. With just one word. Thank you all for sharing. We will now move into to breakout groups to share in quartets, and we have 3 questions for you to guide your discussion, basically. And I will just share these questions here, and it will be take around 20 minutes for these discussions. And these questions are, what are your key takeaways from this story around the theme of leading in times of uncertainty? Having heard Farah's story, how do you see your own situation differently right now? And what is one question emerging from your discussion that you can bring back to our bigger group as a gift? To our bigger group, also to Farah as a gift? What is your golden nuggets that comes out of your discussion? What might be one question that emerges out of your discussion that you can bring back to our bigger group, back to Farah as a gift? And then we will have a chance to hear some voices from the groups, and we will have a chance to bring your questions back to this group as well.
So we have about 10 minutes left of Farah's time. And would like to open it up to questions. And let's see.
Maybe let's use the raise hand and
yeah.
as you see, there are feel free to drop all your questions to chat as well, like that questions emerge from your discussion. So we just keep them and honor the questions as they are in the chat. And if you want to raise your questions, just maybe share your impressions from your discussion groups, your few key takeaways, and bring the question back to our bigger group. Feel free to use the raise hand button under the participants list. So we see one hand, and if you want to select few people from the list.
With the first question I would like to pick and just ask, and it seems like it will cover a few other questions that have emerged as well, which is, how do you know when you've found the right place, the right people? The restlessness aspect should presumably be there all the time. What is Farah feeling restless about now? Specifically, when we heard that Farah has found harmony in Q, or Q's creativity is founded on a sense of harmony.
Okay, that felt like about 27 questions.
Well, yeah. What are you restless about now? And
yeah. So
how does it feel when you're in the right place?
Fair enough. No, I'm teasing you a little bit. So the restlessness, now that's a personality trait of mine. I have an innate restlessness. I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing. I'm just saying I find it hard to get rid of my restlessness, and therefore I channel it positively. I think, if I'm being honest, what I feel restless about now is, for the first time I've been working now for 32 years, 33 years. I've been married for 30 years. I feel two types of restlessness. One, which is obviously to get to the other side of this crisis, because I'm optimistic and hopeful, though what we are going through is terrible. I feel like the other side is going to look like a different world, and I'm excited and restless to get there. So I'm restless that we start to build the tools, we start to build the communities, that we invest in the companies that we have in our site, that we bring forward the creative work in each of the studios, from San Francisco to Taipei, to Tokyo, to New York, to London, to Berlin. I feel restless because it's almost like some amazing patches of creativity have just been held still, and now I'm restless for them to be released, because I think the world they're going to be released back into is a world which is altogether going to need the skills that we went in with. So I guess I'm restless for the other side, whatever that looks like, but I'm restless in an optimistic way for the landscape on the other side that I think we can fill and that we can give meaning to. At a personal level, I'm just restless in this kind of moment of these days, because I have the kind of feeling of day and night and the blur, and you read and then you sleep and then you eat and then you work. It feels like there are no lines. Everything feels like, did anyone see that Woody Allen film where Woody Allen shoots a film, and then for a portion of the film is purposely blurred. You can't see the characters exactly. I forget which film it is. So I feel things are a bit blurry, and I'm pining for more focus and precision, and I want the color to come back and the smells to come back and the people and the plans and the conversation. Right now I feel I'm a bit sleepwalking, like I'm permanently awake and asleep at the same time. So I'm a little bit restless to leave this time of sleepwalking and to come to the other side. and see a landscape that in fact we can put beautiful things into.
Thank you. Raz raised her hand pretty early, so I want to give the mic to her. Raz, if you want to, if you still have your question, would like to share.
Hi, Raz.
Hi, those 27 questions were actually mine.
Okay, great.
Oh.
I'm sorry I didn't answer any of them.
I've got 27 more.
Far away.
Yeah, no, just on the topic, well, there was so many things, and I'm also an extrovert, but bumbling mess on virtual socializing. So in terms of back, I thought there was so much that was so relatable in everything you said, and I'm also of Iranian background and British bred, and my parents say I was built in Zambia. So I'm currently in Dubai and working as an architect, and the reason I'm giving you a bio is because there are all these sort of dichotomies in both sort of personal and professional life. And I wonder, like, I know what Q does, and ATÖLYE and IDEO and all these creative, credible companies that have this sort of purpose-driven intent. And now, sort of, as you were describing, just struggling a bit in a profit-driven setup. So I wonder if, like, so everything that you've done and all your chapters, presumably, like, has one led to the other, or are these kind of, is it a collection of, like, all those experiences have kind of led you to this point, and working in all those different setups kind of led you to be the person that you are and doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah.
Or does there continue to be any sort of dichotomies? Are there still any compromises, even though, like, I don't know, it's probably not, I don't know what kind of answer you could give to this question, but
no, it's a beautiful question.
That you have to make now.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful, complex and very deep question. I would be lying if I said that my life had happened in an orderly sequential and everything led to the next thing, which led to the next thing. That would be a total, utter, barefaced lie. I feel it's sort of been a series of campfires. I was in a campfire and we sat around that fire and we had that community and we did those things. And then I moved to another campfire and then I went to another one. So, and in each camp, there were different people with different, you know, obligations, different studios, we did different things. There are things that, so my career progression has kind of been odd. It was odd to do advertising and then to go to a really big company and then go to Nike and then to, so the randomness of the journey, however, there is a continuity in what I've brought with me from chapter to chapter, and that strengths that I had from the beginning, some things got strengthened and some things came with me from the beginning. So I was always you know, a pretty brave person. I was pretty, you know, I was kind of keen to take risks, to innovate, to embrace new ideas. That's come with me in every chapter. So it hasn't been a continuum. It's been a random series of, you know, there's a bit of chaos thrown in, but things have come with me. And what has come with me also are not just skills and experiences, but very strong memory and very strong muscle memory. I don't mean memory like photographs, but I mean muscle memory has come with me. So how you do have to take action in a time of contraction. What are the economic forces that force you to make economic trade-offs? Those memory muscles are with me now. How do you invest in competing objectives? With All3Media, there was one studio, TV studio, that made amazing period drama for the BBC. I mean, top end, lavish, $1 million an episode, like the best BBC drama money could buy. There was another studio that made entertainment, and those, so the drama people hated the entertainment, you know, and you had to kind of go, well, we've got to invest in both formats. We've got to keep both competing logics being with sell into different markets. So there are certain skills that came with me, though I think my career progression has been a bit random, and that's why I made a point about chance. I mean, a lot of things have happened by chance to me. I think it's completely by chance that I joined the Prime Minister's Business Advisory Group. I'd like to think it's because I was amazing. I happen to know for sure it was slightly chance-based. you know, needed somebody from the creative industry, had to be a woman, should be ethnic, couldn't think of anyone else, so it was me. So a lot of it has been chance. And my arrival at Q is slightly chance. I mean, I've known people from Q for many, many years. And yeah, so then a chance call, a chance dream, a chance thought. I'm not sure I've answered your question at all well, for which I apologize. But
I think your answer was better than my question. So thank you.
Thanks, Russ, for the question. I see Melissa's hand. Melissa, do you want to just unmute yourself? And
thank you so much for an amazingly inspiring talk. We just spoke in the breakout room and just said we all feel slightly more hopeful, and you know, as women in the group as well, we felt more empowered as well. I wanted to just ask really quickly about Girl Effect a little bit more, and if there's anything else that we could do to support it, because I come from an NGO background, and in fact, when you mentioned restless development, I thought that was a place that I applied to years ago as an intern. In the UK. So that sort of made me feel happy. But I don't know if you work in Turkey at all, but is there any chance you could just talk to us a little bit about that, because I was quite curious.
Yeah, so I'm not involved now in Girl Effect. That time has passed. You know, there are new programs, new ideas. But I think the consciousness to make impact in the world, and that for our work to have impact. So for Girl Effect specifically, I don't know if there is a way, so Girl Effect isn't present in Turkey. So it works in sub-Saharan Africa, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, all of Africa, obviously. And in some places in China. So those are the territories, and you know, that's where they work. But I guess the Girl Effect gene, that thought about empowering girls through creativity, through data, through mobile innovation, that thought remains a thought that I think we can bring into every NGO piece of work that we do. So whether you're in Turkey or Britain, any NGO now, however it's working, should be thinking about its digital transformation, should be thinking about, can it over-index on, it's a well-known case that women, even in the developed world, even in America, we had some really good work that we did in Detroit, which showed access to data, access to the ability to put information in the hands of girls in low-income families right across the developed hemisphere, to give them patterns that they could read, communities that they can make, products that they can create, videos they can upload, songs they can write, radio plays that they can actually put out. So if you are interested in the work of Girl Effect, I can certainly connect you to them. But I think there's a Girl Effect gene pool that needs to be released into the world, into the developed world. And it is specifically, it's not aimed at being anti-men, quite the contrary. In order for women to progress, men have to be champions. But the theory was, if you raise a girl, if you literally raise a girl from the floor, you raise a community, because the girl brings a community with her. And that's to say, men have to be champions of women. Men have to encourage women who go through, you know, all kinds of experiences. But the idea of female voice and visibility and female solidarity, and that sense of celebrating each other and cherishing each other, I think remains something that needs to be done in the developed world as well as the global south.
Thank you. And just finally, the fact that you mentioned having that sort of business know-how when you came into the NGO world, I think that's a very specific and important thing that perhaps also is another thing that as communities we could help share at this present moment with the NGOs, because we don't have that. It's still very prevalent right now that a lot of these NGOs don't really know how to go ahead with that.
Yeah, I mean, Nike, look, don't get me wrong, Nike explicitly recruited me from the private sector for the point that you just made, to the not-for-profit sector. And Nike obviously are the kind of company that could go out and then scored me. But you should know, when I first turned up at Girl Effect, I was total disaster. I mean, I was like completely worse than useless, because there are certain things you're used to in the way that firms work. the subject matter was new to me. I'm a quick learner. I knew that I would learn the subject matter of female empowerment, child labor, sexual violence, the kind of health issues. The subject matter wasn't a problem, but my ability to function in a not-for-profit, in the early days, I was terrible. I wanted to move too quickly. I was asking for data that didn't exist. My restlessness was at its worst. I had this terrible sense of, oh my God, I'm so useless. I've got to do something. So a lot of private sector skill and expertise couldn't get unleashed because in the early days, I wasn't context specific. I didn't recognize I had to pause a little bit. I had to think differently. I had to organize a management team differently. I had to think about finances differently. So I would say my early months, total bloody disaster. And then I had to step back and say, okay, come on, what is it that I'm missing here? I did have a lot of skill to unleash, but I had to learn how to do that rather than it had to learn me.
Thank you very much.
So just as maybe a final question, Farah, if you have another 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
So what I see in the comments is Carla asking some questions and then telling us that lost track of the number of goosebumps I got during this session, and then a few others saying +1. So I want to leave the mic to Carla to share her question. Carla, if you still want to share.
Okay, was unexpected. But thank you. Yeah, just overall extremely inspiring and empowering in so many levels. I put the questions as questions of the group. So I think since we were just in the nonprofit topic, I think maybe talking a little bit of why was that, why did you feel the need of moving out of there and going back to Q? Going back to the for-profit world would be interesting to learn a little bit. And amongst that, there was a little bit also about bullying and how sometimes it's less obvious. So if there was anything in particular that you learned in terms of managing as a woman was interesting. And yeah, I think it was just amazing.
Thank you. So on the return from Girl Effect back to Q, so back to a commercial world, I think the true answer is I had gone to Nike. I had a 3-year contract. From the get-go, I had decided they had contracted me for 3 years. I had said, this is 3 years of my life. I was paid. It wasn't pro bono, and I was paid a healthy salary because they wanted me to bring a lot of skill. But I had the sense of this story at Girl Effect needed a beginning, middle, and an end. And in those 3 years, though it twisted and turned and things happened that were truly exceptional, you know, we set up a chatbot in Springster that went to 27 million people. I mean, it was just an incredible journey. There were some terrible epic failures where the British government decided to stop funding our program in Ethiopia, and we were under terrible hostile scrutiny. I felt I lived the story beginning, middle, and end. And when it came to the end of Girl Effect, the end of that contract, there was a really difficult, conflicting moment when they said, will you stay? Can we extend your contract? You've done great work. You know, you've brought so much. Now it's time for another. And I felt, rightly or wrongly, the best of me was behind me in that context. The best of what I had to give was given. Everything I had in those 3 years, every ounce of energy, intelligence, love, ingenuity, hard work, it was given, and I could not give it again. And then my return to the private sector was because I wanted to come back and reverse into the private sector some of the things I'd learned from an NGO and a fabulous Nike Foundation that has its flaws, but it's an incredible, awesome force. So I'd learned stuff there that I felt I could bring back in terms of impact and consciousness and purpose-driven growth and helping companies think about purpose, not just profit. So I had something more to share. And on the women thing, look, I don't know the answer. what has always, I mean, you know, nothing has really stopped me in my tracks. I'm pretty tough, but I learned the power of humor. I did learn how to kind of not take things too seriously, lighten stuff with a joke, not because sometimes you're crying inside and you don't want to make a joke, but actually to just understand where other people are coming from, to put yourself in the shoes of others, to understand what a careless statement is. It's everything we've been taught about bullying or harassment or prejudice, is to show compassion. And for me, an easy way to show compassion is to do it through comedy. Yeah, to do it through humor, to kind of go, oh, that's a complex question, that's 27 questions. That's just my way of saying. So there have been times when I felt like it was a boys' club, where I haven't said, this is a boys' club, and I'm really upset and angry, but I could lighten up and say, well, I'm gonna join you in the boys' club, and I don't drink whiskey, but I'll be ordering a glass of champagne. You know, so there's a little way to, I think you disarm people with humor more than you do with anger, and I'm not sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Farah, once again. This was a very special evening. I'm getting bombarded with texts and emails and people saying they had to leave and can we share the link to the video and everything. We will. So stay tuned for that. It was incredible, and I personally will go back to it over and over to relearn some of the things, because I feel like some of these things that you talked about can only be internalized by listening and then living and then going back to listening and back and forth. So thanks for allowing us to do that.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to say thank you back, because one kind turn deserves another. I want to say thank you back because actually, as I was really phobic about how will it be, there'll be all these people who I won't be able to see or touch or feel, and there'll all be these little slates. This morning I was saying to my husband, will it be like that opera singer who sang in Milan in front of the empty, will it be like that, will I be just speaking to this space? And actually it wasn't like that at all. I felt really heard, and I felt I could almost reach out and touch you. So thank you for bringing a great audience, and you definitely felt like real living human beings with real loving beautiful hearts. So thank you for being a great audience.
Thank you. On that note, here is from our team, one of our dear team members put together a whole visual storytelling of what came out. We'll share this. Anyway, it's just also beautiful to see.
Wow, that's amazing. Really gorgeous.
Come out, yeah. It's Zeynep, and so we thank Zeynep for that.
Thank you, Zeynep. Wow.
Yeah. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining and being so generous with your time and your ideas and thoughts and comments and questions. So thanks for all that, and see you at the next life lessons share. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.